Hey, happy Friday morning to you, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And we're doing some special Friday morning musings. Normally I do Monday through Thursday. But I had promised a lot of people that I would do a response to Kenneth Gentry's book, Have We Missed the Second Coming? So I've produced, I think, 8 videos so far on this. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the kind remarks that I've been getting from this. And I want to continue by this morning with, ever so briefly, taking note of Kenneth Gentry's incredible emphasis. I've already mentioned this in the 2 previous videos. Incredible emphasis on the creeds. Now, you have to understand something. He spends more time on this one single subject than he does on any attempt to exegete Scripture, if my page count is correct. From pages 101 to 139, Kenneth Gentry talks about the creeds, why we must honor the creeds, why the creeds are authoritative. In all of the previous pages, he would only hit Scripture more or less a glancing blow, 2 or 3 pages per passage. And yet, when it comes to the creeds, Kenneth Gentry gives us pages 101 to 139 as if this is more important than the Scriptures themselves. He assures us that because of the so-called united testimony of the creeds, that there will one day be, as he expresses it on page 111, all forms of the Apostles' Creed have Christ physically dying, physically being buried, physically arising, physically ascending, and physically returning. Well, it's only partly true. Scripture has Christ returning in the glory of the Father, not as a human being in a physical body. Matthew 16, 27, 28. Now, the question is asked by Gentry, how would it have been possible for the church to miss the second coming? There are a couple of things at issue here. I want to call your attention to the fact that Jesus himself, in a segment of Scripture that Kenneth Gentry admits refers to the events leading up to the Lord's coming in AD 70. Catch the power of that admission. All right? Kenneth Gentry admits that what I'm about to read to you referred to the events leading up to AD 70. All right. Jesus said, verse 10 of Matthew 24, many, Greek word paloi, will be offended and betray one another and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will arise and will deceive many, Greek word paloi. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many, well, an interesting thing happens in the Greek text here. Instead of just simply paloi, it is now toi paloi. It is the many, and the New American Standard renders that as the majority. The love of the majority will grow cold. Wow. Jesus is here predicting that the majority of Christians would apostatize as a result of persecution, as a result of false prophets, and as a result of lawlessness. An apostasy of endemic proportions. Not only that, in Luke chapter 18, in a context of persecution, Jesus urged his apostles, in light of the coming persecution after he had ascended to the Father, Jesus said, when the Son of Man comes, will he even find faith on the earth? Luke 18, 7 and 8. Do you see a problem here? In the first century, prior to the fall of Jerusalem, prior to the coming of the Lord in AD 70. Jesus himself said that the majority of believers were going to fall away. Now, folks, if the majority of believers fell away, apostatized, we're supposed to believe that all of a sudden, in the apostolic writers who followed that apostasy, who even came out of that apostasy, the patristic writers who were the inheritors of that apostasy, we're supposed to believe that they understood everything correctly? Even Kenneth Gentry agrees and admits there's a lot of confusion in the patristic writers. You can't take everything that they say. No, Kenneth Gentry just tries to take the one thing that they seem to agree on. Folks, that's inconsistent. It doesn't deal with the impact of the great apostasy that Kenneth Gentry, remember, admits these verses apply to the time before AD 70. And not only that, notice that part of that apostasy were misunderstandings about the timing, not the nature, but the timing of the coming of the Lord. In other words, they believed it had already happened prior to the designated time. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24 and 26, if someone says, he, that is Messiah, is out in the desert, don't go out. If they say, he is in the closet of the temple, do not go out there. For as the lightning flashes from the east to the west, even so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Look, folks, as part of that apostasy, Jesus said they will say it's over before it's over. But remember, this is talking about the time and the period before AD 70. And remember, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 1 and 2, Paul wrote to the Thessalonians and he said, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of the Lord and our gathering together to him, that you do not be soon shaken in mind or in spirit, whether as by by spirit or by epistle, as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has already come. What? Mr. Gentry, they thought they had missed the second coming. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 18, Hymenaeus and Philetus taught the resurrection is already past, written before AD 70. Now I want you to notice in both of those passages, Paul did not correct their concept of the nature of the day of the Lord. He did not say, as Kenneth Gentry would have said, look guys, look, you just don't understand. The day of the Lord is when the earth's burned up. The day of the Lord is when physical bodies come out of the ground. Don't you get it? If Kenneth Gentry would have been writing instead of Paul, he would have said, look, there are the graveyards. Physical bodies are still in physical dirt. Therefore, the resurrection hasn't come. A physical bodied Jesus has not come out of heaven as a 5'5" Jewish man. Therefore, Jesus hasn't come. But in none of those passages does Jesus in Matthew 24, does Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2, or Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 2, does Paul ever give even one single word of rebuttal by appealing to the nature, a physical nature, like Mr. Gentry believes in. Rather, he just corrected the timing. Timing. And of course, what's interesting, in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus, after saying, now if they say I'm in the desert, if they say I'm in the closet, which would indicate that they thought the coming of the Lord would be so local, that they could go out in the desert to see him. They didn't believe it would be the end of the world. They could not believe that it would be the end of time. I mean, after all, if you can find Jesus in a closet, I don't think that the world has ended, right? I don't think the earth has been burned up, right? But after warning them against those who would say it had come and he's here or he's there, Jesus said in Matthew 24, immediately after the tribulation of those days, they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Matthew 24:30, 29 and 30. That's kind of a conflation there. But do you see what he's saying? And Kenneth Gentry admits Matthew 24, 29 and following refers to AD 70. Jesus was talking about some people who had their conception that the coming of the Lord would locate Jesus personally, physically, in the desert or in a closet. Jesus said, nope, but it will happen in this generation. And again, and Paul never corrects concept. He corrected timing. Now look, in order to understand this subject far better than we have time for in this video this morning, let me urge you to get a copy of my book, How Is This Possible? I pose the question, if the day of the Lord and the resurrection is an earth-burning, time-ending event when every physical body that has ever died is put in the ground and raised up out of the ground, reconstructed, restored, and revived, how could anybody believe it had already taken place? And yet they did at Thessalonica and they did at Ephesus in 2 Timothy. But let me reemphasize, Paul never taught that concept. It would be impossible to have that concept and to teach it had already happened. So how could they say the day of the Lord and the resurrection was already past? Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, order this book. You will be absolutely thrilled to find the answers to these perplexing questions that absolutely, completely refutes Kenneth Gentry's book, Have We Missed the Second Coming? Well, Kenneth Gentry did miss the second coming. It was in the first century, at the fall of Jerusalem, just like Jesus said it would be. Well, thanks so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday.